The Empire, a colossal force that had crushed countless civilizations, believed that Earth, once a shining beacon of humanity's potential, was now little more than a dying ember. For years, the Empire's relentless war machines had ravaged the planet, systematically destroying cities, wiping out military strongholds, and decimating the once proud human resistance. Earth's skies had been darkened by smoke and the endless hum of enemy ships, the cities now only shadows of their former selves. The Empire's generals, standing tall in their command centers across the galaxy, looked down upon Earth with disdain and superiority. To them, the humans had finally been broken. The human spirit, once fierce and unyielding, had been crushed beneath the weight of their enemies' superior technology and overwhelming forces. Reports from the front lines painted a bleak picture. What was left of humanity's military was nothing more than a handful of scattered remnants, fighting a battle they had no hope of winning. And yet, the Empire's arrogance was its greatest mistake. As Earth's military leadership sat in the remnants of their ruined bunkers, surrounded by the last of their commanders, the decision was made. Earth could not win this war. The cities were falling, the last pockets of resistance were being wiped out one by one, and the Empire's forces were preparing to deliver a final blow. With heavy hearts and weary minds, the human leaders ordered the retreat. They had no choice but to abandon their beloved planet and flee to the shadows of space, hoping to survive long enough to rebuild, someday somewhere, away from the Empire's wrath. The command was clear: survive, live to fight another day. Meanwhile, high above the Earth, in the Empire's gleaming flagship, the leaders were preparing for the endgame. Their massive battle cruisers hovered above Earth's last major strongholds, ready to unleash their devastating final assault. The Empire's commanders, confident that the humans had no fight left, eagerly awaited the moment when they could deliver their victory, when Earth would finally be eradicated from the galactic map. But there was something they didn't know, something they hadn't anticipated. Despite the destruction, despite the desperate situation on the ground, humanity had one last card to play. Earth had a secret, one so carefully hidden for years that even the Empire's vast intelligence networks had failed to uncover it. While the Empire believed it had already won, Earth's second wave was silently being prepared in the depths of space. It wasn't just a new army, nor a new weapon. It was the culmination of everything humanity had learned from their struggles, their pain, and their resilience. Far from being defeated, Earth had been quietly building its strength in the shadows. The humans had not given up. They had not lost their will. The second wave wasn't some last-minute desperation. It was an intricate plan forged over the years in secret, a hidden force waiting for the right moment to strike. In deep space, a fleet of ships, quiet, almost invisible, sat ready, outfitted with new technologies, weapons reverse-engineered from the alien forces that had once sought to dominate them. The Evolium Energy Core, a groundbreaking invention, powered these ships with a force never before seen by the Empire. It wasn't just about military might. It was about humanity's unyielding resolve, their refusal to accept defeat, no matter the odds. As the Empire prepared to fire the final shot, they failed to notice the gathering storm. Earth wasn't finished, it wasn't over. And soon they would learn just how wrong they had been about the humans they had underestimated for so long. What the Empire didn't realize was that while they thought they had already crushed Earth's spirit, they had merely stirred a force unlike anything they had ever encountered. And soon that force would rise from the ashes of a devastated Earth, and the Empire would realize, too late, that humanity was far from finished. The final blow had been prepared by the Empire, but Earth's second wave was about to show them that some things, like the spirit of humankind, could never be destroyed. As the Empire's final assault on Earth neared, the planet's last pockets of resistance were preparing for what seemed like their inevitable end. The remnants of humanity's forces, battered and broken, held their ground in the shadow of towering, invincible alien warships. Each move they made, each last-ditch effort to push back, felt like a futile attempt to stave off the inevitable. With most of Earth's major cities reduced to rubble, and the enemy's forces closing in on the remaining strongholds, humanity's resolve was being tested like never before. But just as it seemed that all hope was lost, something unexpected occurred. In the darkest corners of space, hidden far from the Empire's gaze, a massive fleet of human ships silently came to life. These weren't ordinary ships. They were far more advanced, built with alien technology scavenged from the remnants of past conflicts. For years, the Empire had been unaware of this hidden fleet, tucked away in an ancient, forgotten base beneath the red sands of Mars. The base, once a relic of a time long past, had been abandoned by all except a small group of Earth's finest engineers, scientists, and military leaders, those who believed that the survival of humanity depended not just on fighting back, but on creating something powerful enough to challenge the Empire's might. This second wave, as they called it, was more than just an army of soldiers. It was a fleet of ships, equipped with technology that the Empire would never have anticipated. The humans had reverse-engineered alien technology to build their ships, adding their own ingenuity and relentless drive to create a fleet capable of facing the Empire head-on. The centerpiece of their weaponry was something the Empire couldn't have imagined: Evolium, a new energy source capable of amplifying human resilience, strength, and innovation beyond anything the Empire had ever seen. Unlike anything the Empire had encountered, Evolium gave Earth's ships an edge that the invaders couldn't predict. With this power, Earth's fleet could not only survive but fight back in ways they never thought possible. The most incredible part of the second wave was that the humans had not been scrambling for survival. They had been planning for this moment for years. In the shadows, they had quietly collected their remaining resources, knowing that the only way to beat the Empire was to strike when they least expected it. The Empire had assumed Earth was on its last breath. They didn't know that while they had been celebrating the destruction of Earth's major cities, humanity had been working in silence, building a fleet that was now ready to unleash its fury. As the human ships powered up, the resistance fighters on the surface of Earth were given new hope. The survivors, who had been preparing to face their doom, now understood that the war was far from over. The first strike came quickly and unexpectedly. Earth's fleet launched a surprise counterattack that caught the Empire off guard. They had believed the humans were defeated, but instead, they found themselves facing a force they had never encountered before. The Empire's commanders, at first stunned by the sudden appearance of Earth's fleet, quickly scrambled to regroup. Their ships, designed for domination, found themselves vulnerable against the unexpected power of human technology and strategy. The Evolium-powered ships danced through space, dodging enemy fire with agility that left the Empire's forces struggling to keep up. Human pilots, trained for years in secrecy, flew with precision and ferocity. They were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their world, their future, and everything they had lost. The counterattack hit hard and fast. For every Empire ship that fell, the humans seemed to grow stronger, more determined. With each victory, word spread among the remaining resistance fighters on Earth. The second wave was no longer just a hope. It was a reality, and it was changing the course of the war. As the fleet pushed forward, its presence was a beacon of defiance, a symbol of humanity's unyielding spirit. In the vast expanse of space, the Empire realized too late that they had underestimated the humans. They had thought Earth was broken, that the humans were on the brink of extinction. But what they didn't know was that Earth had always been a world of resilience, and that resilience was now embodied in the form of the second wave, a force built on ingenuity, determination, and the unrelenting will to survive. The Empire, once so sure of its victory, now faced a challenge it wasn't prepared for. The battle had only just begun, and the humans were ready to fight with everything they had. The Empire's initial reaction to the emergence of Earth's fleet was one of disbelief, quickly followed by dismissal. For years, they had crushed the remnants of humanity's resistance, and they were certain that the small fleet now appearing in Earth's orbit was nothing more than a fleeting last gasp from a dying species. The Empire's forces, vast and overwhelming, had long been seen as invincible. Their numbers alone seemed enough to obliterate anything in their path, and their advanced weaponry was designed to crush even the most formidable opponents. So, as Earth's fleet formed in the vast darkness of space, the Empire's commanders barely gave it a second thought. They expected a brief skirmish, a minor irritation to be quickly wiped away, and then they could continue their conquest without further interruption. But as soon as the first shots were fired, the Empire realized they had made a terrible miscalculation. What they assumed was a small, desperate force quickly proved to be a well-organized, highly efficient fighting unit. The first surprise came when their own weapons, designed to obliterate entire fleets, seemed ineffective against the human ships. The Empire's flagship fired a salvo of plasma missiles, expecting to shred Earth's fleet in an instant. But the missiles simply passed through the human ship's shields, that energy dissipating harmlessly. It was as if the humans had developed weapons that bypassed the most advanced technology the Empire possessed. The Empire's commanders stayed in confusion as their once impregnable defenses failed against a force they had considered weak. The next shock came when they realized the human pilots, not just their ships, were far more skilled than they could have ever imagined. The humans had always been known for their tenacity and adaptability, but the Empire had underestimated how quickly these qualities had evolved. The human pilots weren't just skilled, they were adaptive, responding to every maneuver of the Empire's ships with a level of creativity and ingenuity that left the Empire's soldiers scrambling to keep up. Where the Empire's ships followed predictable patterns, the humans had developed new tactics that left their enemies struggling to respond. Human pilots, with their years of desperation and experience, had become the ultimate strategists, able to adapt on the fly, changing tactics with every passing moment. As the battle raged on, the Empire's fleet found itself outclassed by a force that should have been nothing more than a minor nuisance. The human ships darted through the vast emptiness of space with agility that made the Empire's forces look clumsy in comparison. Where the Empire's soldiers relied on brute force and firepower, the humans used their environment, the layout of the battlefield, and their own creativity to outsmart their opponents. The Empire's commanders, who had once been so confident in their superiority, found themselves bewildered. Every plan they set in motion was countered, every strategy was upended by the humans' unpredictable moves. The situation was spiraling out of control, and the Empire's leaders could no longer deny the truth. The humans were not only fighting for survival, they were fighting to win. The more the Empire pressed its advantage, the more they realized just how much they had underestimated Earth's inhabitants. The humans weren't just surviving, they were thriving. The raw determination and willpower that had always been at the heart of humanity's nature had now been honed into something even more dangerous, a drive to take back their world, their future, and their place in the galaxy. As the battle continued, the Empire's forces began to realize that this wasn't a typical fight. This wasn't the end of a civilization. This was the beginning of humanity's rise. The Empire had always relied on sheer force to crush those who opposed it, but it was learning, too late, that there was more to warfare than just numbers and technology. There was something deeper, something the Empire could never have predicted, a power rooted in the very core of the human spirit. And that spirit, driven by survival and the will to reclaim what was theirs, was turning the tide of the war. The Empire's commanders looked at the human ships now surrounding them, their once unshakable confidence beginning to crumble. The humans, they now realized, were not only a formidable opponent, they were the kind of adversary that no amount of firepower or numbers could easily defeat. This fight would not be won in the traditional ways. This would be a battle of wills, and the Empire was slowly realizing that the humans might just be stronger than their own. For the first time in years, the Empire began to question whether it could truly crush Earth. And as the battle raged on, that question hung in the air, unanswered, but with a growing sense of doubt. The battle between the Empire and Earth's newly formed fleet was reaching its peak. Humanity, with all its ingenuity and determination, had managed to hold its own, but the Empire's overwhelming power still loomed over them like a dark shadow. The flagship of the Empire, the largest and most devastating vessel in the entire fleet, was preparing to unleash its ultimate weapon, a planet-destroying laser that could erase Earth in an instant. As the weapon powered up, the entire human fleet braced for the inevitable. There was no doubt in anyone's mind that this would be the end. The Empire had already defeated them once, and this final strike would leave nothing behind. It was the Empire's victory, a triumph they had waited years for. The energy from the flagship's weapon began to build, its massive cannon aimed directly at Earth, ready to unleash devastation. The silence before the storm was deafening. But just as the weapon reached its peak and the Empire's commanders prepared to deliver the fatal blow, a sudden, unexpected change rippled through the battlefield. Without warning, a surge of energy pulsed across space, far more powerful than anything the humans could have mustered. The Empire's flagship, which had been a symbol of their overwhelming power, suddenly faltered. Its systems blinked and flickered, and its enormous cannon sputtered, unable to fire. Panic rippled through the Empire's ranks. This wasn't supposed to happen. The humans were supposed to be defeated. Behind the scenes, Earth's best engineers, working tirelessly aboard one of the human ships, had just revealed a secret that had been hidden from the Empire all along. A secret so ancient, so powerful, that even the Empire had no knowledge of it. Buried deep beneath the surface of the moon, lying dormant for millennia, was a mysterious artifact left behind by an ancient human civilization long forgotten by the galaxy. The artifact was more than just a relic. It was a weapon, an energy source so powerful that it could disrupt the advanced technology of the Empire, reversing the tide of the battle. The humans had uncovered the artifact years ago, but only now, in the most desperate of moments, had they dared to activate it. The engineers, knowing the stakes, had devised a bold plan to tap into the artifact's hidden power. Using a daring maneuver, the human fleet maneuvered close to the moon and with precision activated the artifact from their ships. The result was immediate. A pulse of energy erupted from the moon's surface, sending a shockwave through space that surged directly into the heart of the Empire's fleet. For the first time since the battle began, the Empire's technology began to fail. Their once impenetrable shields flickered and collapsed, their weapons stopped working, and their systems began to malfunction. It was as if the entire Empire's technological superiority had been turned against itself. The flagship, once poised to annihilate Earth, was now a sitting target. The humans, seizing the moment, launched a coordinated counterattack. Without the Empire's advanced weaponry and with their shields failing, the once mighty fleet began to crumble. The Empire's commanders scrambled, desperate to regain control, but the damage was done. The humans had found the perfect countermeasure, a weapon older than the Empire itself, and they had used it with breathtaking precision. The artifact's power, though mysterious and ancient, had given Earth's fleet a fighting chance, a chance they had not thought possible just moments before. As the Empire's flagship struggled to stay operational, the human fleet surged forward, pushing the Empire's forces back. It was no longer a battle of overwhelming numbers and firepower. It was a battle of survival, of strategy, and of an unexpected, ancient force that the Empire could never have anticipated. The humans had unearthed a legacy from their own past, a gift from an unknown civilization that had once called Earth home. And now, with this weapon at their disposal, the Empire was beginning to realize that the war had just taken a turn they could not control. The advantage had shifted, and the once great Empire now found itself facing an adversary unlike any it had ever encountered. For the first time in this war, the humans had the upper hand, and they intended to keep it. As the Empire's grip on Earth began to falter, the humans found themselves on the offensive for the first time in years. The power of Earth's second wave, now bolstered by the ancient artifact and the strength of a fleet that had surprised the Empire, was beginning to resonate across the galaxy. The Empire, once so certain of its dominance, now found itself struggling to maintain control over the vast systems it had so easily conquered. Humanity, instead of just defending its world, had begun to take the fight to the empire itself, striking at the heart of their empire with guerrilla tactics that left the invaders reeling. The humans were no longer the weak, isolated species the empire had assumed they were. With their new fleet and weaponry, they launched calculated attacks on the empire's key supply lines, energy conduits, military outposts, and logistical hubs spread across multiple star systems. These small, fast strikes disrupted the Empire's operations and left them scrambling to keep their forces supplied and operational. Every victory on the front lines only fueled the humans' resolve, while each blow to the Empire's infrastructure made their once unassailable hold on the galaxy seem less and less certain. But the humans weren't stopping at just sabotage. They understood that to defeat the Empire, they needed to rally others to their cause. And so, Earth's forces began to reach out to the countless oppressed worlds scattered across the galaxy, planets that had suffered under the Empire's iron rule for centuries. The message was clear: humanity was fighting back, and they were ready to stand alongside those willing to rise up against the Empire. It wasn't just about reclaiming Earth anymore. It was about reclaiming the galaxy from the Empire's grasp. And to the surprise of the Empire, many of these oppressed worlds answered the call. Rebellions flared across multiple star systems as those long subjugated by the Empire saw a glimmer of hope. The human spirit, once thought broken, had sparked something far bigger than just a rebellion. It was an uprising that spanned the stars. On countless planets, formerly subdued populations began to organize, inspired by humanity's courage and ingenuity. What had started as a desperate fight for Earth now became a galaxy-wide war of liberation. Human forces, having honed their tactics in the dark corners of their own planet, shared their knowledge of guerrilla warfare with these new allies, strengthening the resistance efforts. The once stagnant rebellions on far-off worlds found new life, fueled by the energy of a larger cause. The Empire, stretched thin across its occupied territories, could no longer manage its control over these uprisings. Meanwhile, the Empire's commanders watched in disbelief as their once unyielding empire began to fracture. They had been so certain that the humans were a species too primitive, too weak to stand up against them. Now they were learning the hard truth. Earth was not just a planet. They were a spark, and from that spark, a fire was rapidly spreading. The Empire had underestimated the humans' capacity for resistance, and now that fire was sweeping through the galaxy, threatening to engulf everything the Empire had built. The battlefronts expanded rapidly, stretching from one star system to the next. The Empire's warships, once symbols of their dominance, were now facing off against a growing coalition of forces. The Empire's massive fleets, once feared for their sheer numbers, were now scattered and disorganized. They could no longer fight a war on all fronts. The human fleet, bolstered by the rebellion of countless other worlds, struck where the Empire was weakest, picking off its outer territories and reclaiming long-lost worlds. Every skirmish, every small victory, began to chip away at the Empire's once imposing presence in the galaxy. It was no longer just a defense of Earth. The Empire was facing the beginning of a war they had never expected. A war that wasn't about conquering a single world, but about liberating the stars themselves. The humans, now united with their newfound allies, were no longer just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the very future of the galaxy. And as the Empire scrambled to maintain its crumbling hold, its commanders could feel the weight of the situation settling in. The humans had unleashed their full potential. They had evolved from desperate survivors into a force that was taking back everything the Empire had stolen. What had seemed like a final, decisive victory for the Empire was now unraveling, and the struggle for the galaxy had only just begun. The war had reached its final chapter. After years of struggle and sacrifice, Earth's fleet, now reinforced by an alliance of rebellious worlds, had gathered its strength for a decisive strike against the heart of the Empire. Their target, the Empire's capital system, the very cradle of the oppressive force that had tried to crush humanity. It was a bold move, one that would determine the fate of the galaxy. Earth's forces had come a long way since the early days of desperation, but now they were no longer fighting for mere survival. This was a crusade, a battle for freedom, not just for Earth, but for every planet that had been subjugated under the Empire's rule. As the human fleet assembled for the final assault, there was a growing sense of unity and purpose. The stakes had never been higher. This was their last chance to strike at the core of the Empire and end its reign of terror once and for all. But as the fleet pushed forward, navigating through the deep reaches of space, they began to uncover dark truths hidden beneath the Empire's glistening surface. Their victory over the Empire would be far more than just a triumph over a conqueror. It would expose the brutal, horrifying reality of the Empire's true nature. Through intercepted communications and hidden data streams, the humans learned of a devastating plan. The Empire had been systematically eradicating entire civilizations across the galaxy, wiping out entire species under the guise of conquest. The humans weren't just fighting for Earth, they were fighting to stop an extinction-level event that would obliterate countless worlds, including their own. This revelation ignited an even deeper fire in the hearts of Earth's soldiers and their allies. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a fight for every life in the galaxy, for every world that had fallen under the Empire's boot. With this new knowledge, humanity's forces pressed on, determined more than ever to confront the Empire's leadership. As they neared the capital system, the human fleet made its final preparations. The Empire, though shaken by the humans' unexpected success, had prepared its own defenses, numerous fleets stationed around the capital, ready to crush any attempt at rebellion. The Empire's military was a force of pure strength and overwhelming numbers, but it lacked the flexibility and creativity that had become the hallmark of humanity's tactics. As the battle began, Earth's fleet pushed forward with a strategy that was anything but predictable. While the Empire relied on rigid formations and brute force, the humans used agility, unpredictability, and sheer will to press their advantage. Their ships darted in and out of the Empire's lines, attacking weak points, disrupting supply chains, and causing chaos within the Empire's defenses. The Empire's commanders, once confident in their superiority, now found themselves on the back foot. Their once unstoppable formations were constantly outmaneuvered, and their technology, while advanced, was being stretched to its limits. The human fleet was relentless, pushing forward with a unity and determination that the Empire had never seen. Their tactics, adaptable and unpredictable, were the perfect counter to the Empire's rigid strategies. As the battle raged on, humanity's forces began to break through the Empire's defenses, one shield at a time. The Empire's mighty warships, which had once struck fear into the hearts of entire star systems, were now struggling to keep up with the smaller, faster human ships. Each time the Empire's forces thought they had gained an upper hand, the humans would shift their tactics, turning the tide once again. The decisive moment came as Earth's forces broke through the final line of defense, reaching the heart of the Empire's capital system. The human fleet, battered but unyielding, finally breached the Empire's last line of defense, the flagship that had once seemed invincible. With a surge of collective will, Earth's forces launched a final assault on the heart of the Empire's power, overwhelming the defenders in a flurry of strikes that shattered the capital's defenses. The Empire, once so confident in its dominance, now found itself facing the inevitable collapse of its reign. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the humans had won. The Empire's forces, stretched thin and disorganized, began to fall apart, their commanders no longer able to maintain control. What had begun as a desperate struggle for survival had turned into a stunning victory for humanity and its allies. The final confrontation between humanity and the Empire's leadership had unfolded in the very heart of the Empire, and the results were undeniable. The humans had not only survived, they had triumphed. The tide had turned, and the Empire's reign of terror was coming to an end. The final confrontation had come. After months of brutal warfare, strategy, and resistance, humanity's forces stood at the doorstep of the Empire's heart. the Central Command Facility, a colossal fortress located in the capital system. It was here, in this final stronghold, that the fate of the galaxy would be decided. The human fleet, bolstered by countless allies from across the stars, launched a massive coordinated strike that would strike at the core of the Empire itself. With unparalleled precision, they tore through the Empire's last line of defense, pushing forward to capture the most important prize, the Emperor himself. The man who had once thought his empire was invincible, the ruler who had believed that Earth and its people were nothing more than an insignificant speck in the galaxy, was about to face the consequences of his arrogance. The Empire, once the pinnacle of power, was about to crumble, not because of superior military might from another race, but because of the unyielding will of a species that refused to be broken. As the final assault unfolded, the Emperor, desperate to preserve his rule, attempted to rally his forces one last time. But it was too late. Humanity's leaders, now standing victorious, demanded one final act of defiance: the surrender of the Empire's forces and the freedom of the countless planets that had been subjugated for so long. The human fleet surrounded the Central Command Facility, their weapons aimed not just at the physical structures, but at the very heart of the Empire's ideology. It was a demand that the Empire could no longer ignore. The Emperor, now captured and brought to his knees, watched in disbelief as his once unbreakable empire fell apart. His soldiers, long loyal to the cause, were now faced with a bitter reality: the Empire's reign of terror was over. The strength of humanity's willpower had shattered the Empire's facade of invincibility. Where the Empire had relied on overwhelming force and fear, the humans had relied on something far more potent: their adaptability, their creativity, and their unwavering determination to be free. The Empire had underestimated the human spirit for far too long, and now they were paying the price for that mistake. The forces that had once stood firm in their loyalty to the Empire began to waver, their morale broken. Some of the Empire's commanders, faced with the undeniable truth that their rule had ended, surrendered willingly, while others, unwilling to face defeat, retreated in disgrace. The once mighty Empire, with all its fleets, armies, and vast territories, was falling apart from within. It was not the strength of another race that had destroyed the Empire. It was the unyielding power of humanity's will. With the Empire in ruins, Earth and its newfound allies stood at the threshold of a new era. The victory was not just a military one, it was a triumph of ideals. Humanity had not risen to conquer the galaxy, but to liberate it. Earth, once on the brink of destruction, now stood as a beacon of hope in the galaxy. The message was clear: the tyranny of the Empire would no longer be tolerated. No longer would any race be subjugated to the will of a cruel, despotic empire. The galaxy would be free, and Earth would be at the forefront of this new age. Humanity, in all its raw, untapped potential, had proved that it could not only survive, it could thrive, adapt, and inspire others to fight for their freedom. As Earth and its allies began the long process of rebuilding, a sense of hope spread across the galaxy. No longer would systems be ruled by fear. The newly formed alliance, once a mere dream in the hearts of the oppressed, had become a reality. The humans, with their allies at their side, set to work on ensuring that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. The galaxy had been forever changed, not by the firepower of a superior race, but by the strength of human spirit and the determination to never again be subjugated. The second wave had been just the beginning. The humans had finally realized their full potential, not as conquerors, but as liberators. The day the Empire fell would be remembered forever across the stars as the day humanity proved that, no matter how dark the circumstances, no matter how powerful the enemy, Earth was far from finished. The legacy of that victory would echo through the galaxy for generations to come, a reminder that no empire, no matter how mighty, could ever stand against the power of a united, determined humanity.